What's going on, everyone? My name is SiahZ, and welcome back to our updated Lightning Huntress Amazon build. We have doubled our damage, now doing over 80 million damage per second, doing 2 to 3 man plus 4 level pinnacle boss kills within 1 second, shredding through the content, having really good clear and good survivability. And also, did I mention that we are not running a spear? Overall, the build is a blast to play, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Before we get into the video, if you guys do enjoy this type of content or you like what I'm doing on my YouTube channel, if you consider hitting a like on the video and a subscribe to the channel, it does help me out immensely, and it helps with the YouTube algorithm to push the video out to newer people. And overall, that currently is the best way to support me. Also should be live right now on YouTube and Twitch streaming the build. If you guys have any questions or you want to vibe with me on stream, the link for that will be in the description as well as the comment section of the video. All right, let's get right into it. So we can go into the gear first. For our crossbow, we are still going to be looking for very high accuracy rating and level to projectile skills. These are the two best modifiers to give us a lot of damage. And then obviously if we can roll attack speed on here, that's a really nice modifier as well to roll. So I honestly prioritize those three. After that, if you can roll like high physical damage or high flat lightning or something like that on it to be more beneficial, we'll add more DPS. But honestly, accuracy, attack speed, and projectile skills is way more important in my opinion. For the helmet, we're still running the DPS tower. This is just going to give us a ton of overall DPS since enemies in our presence will count as being on low life, meaning that, you know, there's a lot of stuff on the tree like increased damage against enemies on low life, lucky hits against enemies on low life, etc. So we can add a ton of overall DPS to the build, and it's honestly best in slot for any hit-based like skills, so that's why we run it here in this instance. For the body armor, we're still running a hybrid body armor, prioritizing going try LE res to be res capped, and if you can, roll high life values on there, but we want to also try to get decent evasion and energy shield rolled on the hybrid armor. This way we get a lot more survivability to the build. For our gloves, I did roll a hybrid armor evasion here, but honestly you would want to go for high evasion rating based gloves. I just wanted to get gloves that actually gave us, you know, the crit damage, attack speed, etc., and then get some sort of resistances to be res capped. And this is the ones that I could find that were cheap, so I went ahead and picked them up. But like I said, you would want to prioritize high evasion rating with crit damage and attack speed because it'll add a lot of overall DPS to the build. And then if you can, try to get like lightning damage or fizz damage or both of them rolled onto the gloves as well. For the boots, again, high evasion rating boots, going for try LE res to be res capped and just looking for high move speed, and that pretty much wraps up what we're looking for. For the jewelry, we are actually swapping out our amulet. We are going for the Rondell of Fragility now instead of a rare. The reason for this is it gives us a lot more damage than rolling like a rare amulet with plus level to projectile skills, and it's much cheaper to get because it's going to give us 50% increased damage, which is huge, and that skill speed gives us overall a ton of DPS since it'll give us basically like 3 to 4 more attacks per second with shock burst, meaning a ton more damage, and the crit chance is nice on top of that. So that's why we go for Rondell of Fragility now. We're still going to be running the Storm Charge Anoint for the increased elemental damage with your crit and then the increased crit chance. As far as our rings, we're still running it on set because we can run obviously emergency reload to get like 45% more damage. There's no reason not to. It's just a lot of overall DPS. So we're running it on set, prioritizing obviously going for accuracy rating and getting dex and intelligence rolled on here. Now you can do dex or you can do strength. Either one works in this situation. We just need to have double attribute rolls on here. So this way we can get up to those attribute thresholds. This way we can, you know, get all of the high level gems and stuff like that equipped. And then obviously if you can, roll some reses on there to be res capped, and any type of flat damage values like lightning or, you know, physical damage or lightning and increased damage there is going to be really good and add a lot of overall damage since we are running Ingenuity. The reason why we're running Ingenuity now obviously is because the increased bonuses on our rings are going to juice our damage even more. And on top of that, you know, besides running like a rare, we lose resistances and that's it. This is going to be the best in slot. Obviously it'll juice our ring, some more resistances, more attributes, etc. As for the last ring, we are running a ruby ring. You know, this way we can get double rolls into fire res, but honestly play with your reses, whatever you need, roll it. If it's a sapphire, you know, if you need to go like prismatic, whatever you want to do, just look at your stuff and go from there. Obviously still prioritizing the same exact stuff as the first one, accuracy, intelligence, and any like flat damage rolls or anything like that that'll give you more DPS to your skills. As far as the back bar, we're still running a wand, prioritizing crit chance and increased chance of shock. So this way our ball of lightning and Orbis storms can, you know, shock the enemy quicker. And then any damage with, you know, like lightning damage, anything that'll give the skills more damage so it can apply it easier. Go ahead and look and try to roll on that wand. As far as our offhand, we are running an effigy of cruelty. Basically, the reason we're running this is the critical hits with spells, and since we're running, you know, ball lightning, which is a spell, or storms, it's a spell, etc., we'll get 5 stacks of critical weakness. So we're just going to get a ton of overall crit chance to the build, basically doubling the crit chance and doubling the damage of the build. and it's really cheap, honestly, to get the effigy of cruelty plus the 1. So that's why we run it here. Now we can get into our skill gems. So for shock burst rounds, we want to have this highest level with quality. We're going to be running martial tempo because we want to have basically as many projectiles shot per second. So that's why we throw it there. Then we have concentrated effect with 30% more area damage, and since it is an AoE skill, we'll get 30% more damage there. Going with close combat now, which is 25% more attack damage to enemies within 1 meter. And since basically we want to be right up against enemies to count them on low life, this plays perfect with us. Now, the main reason why we swapped out Fresh Clip is because it only lasts for 6 seconds. On top of that, if we actually are pre-ramping up the boss spawns, time we go in through our connectivity, you know, mark, we shock them, warband or go back, we are basically out. We have like 1 second left or less than that of you know, having Fresh Clip up. And then in our second clip, you know, we don't have those super juiced again, and in many cases we don't even have it up at all going into when the boss spawns. So it's much simpler and way more damage uptime just run close combat. So that's why we do it here and drop Fresh Clip. Now we are going to be running Execute, 50% more damage with hits against enemies that are in low life. Since we're counting them with the deepest tower, there's no reason not to run this. That's 50% more damage, which is huge. And then finally, Elemental Focus for 25% more elemental damage. And since we are basically having lucky hits and stuff, we want to have Elemental Focus on to create, you know, a lot higher of that min to max lightning damage values to get a lot more damage out of lucky hits. For Galvanic Shards, we want to have this highest level with quality, and what I do while mapping, I just take Martial Tempo out and throw it in, and then once I'm bossing, I'll take Martial Tempo out and put it in Shock Burst and stuff like that. This feels a lot better to have that increased attack speed for mapping and bossing, so that's why I do it. Then we have Gamble Shot, so basically every projectile fired will have a chance of fork, chaining, or piercing. Adds a lot better clear to the skill, and that's why I run it in this instance. Then we're going to be running Primal Armament, obviously, for 25% more weapon elemental damage. And then we are getting into Acceleration, because this will actually allow it to have a little bit more range and stuff like that. So it allows it to have better clearing capabilities. And finally, for the last link, I do run Mobility on here. This way we'll have less movement speed penalty while using the skill. It just feels better for clearing and allows us to go through maps a bit quicker. Then we have Connectivity. I'm running at level 12, but honestly, whatever you can go up to with your attribute, level that up to there. Obviously with quality, we're running Cursed Ground. It's basically turn it into an AoE like persisting skill instead of it being you know, a time skill where you have to time the enemy inside of it to get cursed. Basically, if they walk into it, they'll get cursed. That's why we run it here. It's much easier to play around. Then we get in Heightened Curse to have 25% increase in magnitude of it. This way, the negative lightning resistance that it actually applies to enemies will be increased by Heightened Curse. That's why we run it there. And then finally, we run Ritualistic Curse to actually have increased area of effect of it. So this way, it's a little bit easier to play around and use. Then we get in Fall Take Mark. Obviously, there's no reason to level it up. Throw quality on here. Basically just going to give us increased effect of marked enemy, which means once we throw it on, it will have more magnitude of shock on the enemy. Then we get into Orbis Storms. Again, you want to have this on weapon set 2 and Ball Lightning on weapon set 2 and everything else weapon set 1. So you want to go Orbis Storms, again, whatever level you can go up to with your int. From there, we want to go ahead and throw on Font of Rage, this way we can generate rage while near it. Font of Mana to have more mana regen, Magnified Effect obviously for a bigger AoE, and then finally I go on Persistence, this way it'll have more skill effect duration. Then we get into our War Banner. This is really good for bossing basically, because once this gets up to like 50% Valor, this is going to give us a ton of more attack damage, which means a lot more damage overall to the build, plus increased accuracy rating as well, means more crit chance, and overall it adds a ton more damage than pretty much any other support here or any other reservation we can run. So that's why we run it here. This just helps us get up there and achieve that 80 million, you know, damage per second once we're going against pinnacle bosses, etc. Now, one thing I will say real quick, if you're mapping, what I do is I take War Banner off and actually replace it with Ghost Dance, because we don't need this while mapping. You know, we don't need War Banner, we don't need that damage against map bosses. You only really need it against high, you know, like pinnacle bossing, etc. So that's why I do that. It's really simple to just throw Ghost Dance in, and this way you have a lot better survivability, and the build feels a lot better to play through maps. You know, you can sustain more, etc. And then once we're bossing, we just throw in War Banner, and then bang, we're good to go. Then we get into Emergency Reload. This basically is going to fully reload our crossbow and give it 30% more damage for that clip, which is huge for us and adds overall a ton of more damage. Then we get into Premeditation. So basically this is going to make it, instead of doing 30%, 45% more damage, since it adds 15%, which is huge. Then we run Murderous Intent basically to have Culling Strike once we actually use the skill. Then we get into Wind Dancer. It just gives us, you know, more evasion rating per stage, and we can have 3 stages, so that's 30% more evasion rating, adds overall a really good amount of survivability to the build. And then we just throw Precision in there since we have 10 remaining Spirit. This way we can get more accuracy rating, which means more crit chance, etc. Then we get into our Ball Lightning. Again, you want this on weapon set 2. This is going to be our main applicator of shock. we're going to run conduction in here to have more chance to shock, overcharge to have increased magnitude of shocks, lightning exposure, so when we apply shock, we will actually apply exposure, bringing down the resistances even further. Then we get into strip away to have an increased effect of the exposure. And then I just run arcane tempo in here as the last one. You don't need it. It just kind of makes the skill feel a lot nicer. This way we can cast it quicker. Then finally, the last thing we're running is Herald of Thunder. Again, highest level you can, going up to your decks with quality. This is going to help us while clearing. Then we are running Lightning Pen on it, so this way we can pen through resistances, etc. Since we are not obviously running connectivity and stuff like that once we're mapping. So this way, you know, it'll have more damage, pen through resistances. Then we are going Long Shot to have more attack damage, since this is going to go away from our character. Chain, you know, kind of go off screen a little bit, so this way we can clear those enemies in the back line easier. Finally, Enervate, so we have more lightning damage once we kill a shocked enemy with the skill. And then finally, Lightning Infusion to get more lightning damage on the skill, so this way it'll do obviously more damage overall. And that pretty much covers the skill gems we're running there. Now we can get into the skill tree. So for the Ascendancy, we're going to be going into Critical Strike. So this way we can get 25% of the excess chance to hit back as critical hit chance, meaning that we get a lot more crit chance overall. Then we're going to be going into Penetrate. So basically 25% of the accuracy rating on the weapon will be added as added physical damage. So that's why we try to prioritize high accuracy on our crossbow. Going into Predatory Instinct for 50% more damage against enemies with open weaknesses. And then finally in for the kill, because we want to get that 40% increased skill speed with enemies with open weakness. It allows us to do a lot more damage with our shock bursts and stuff like that when pinnacle bossing. From there, we want to come in and go into Primal Instinct for the attack speed, going in Eagle Eye obviously for the increased accuracy rating, which is huge. Coming down and dropping to the left here and following this path down, so this way we can go into these nodes here to get increased damage with hits against enemies on low life. Stars Align will give us damage with hits is lucky against enemies on low life. Finishing Blows is 60% increased damage against enemies on low life, etc. So a lot of increased damage here against enemies on low life. That's why we want to run the Deepest Tower. A lot of DPS overall added to the build. From there, we want to go on Precision Salvo for the increased attack speed and accuracy rating that we'll be getting here. Coming down and going into Cooked and taking the right side for the crit chance and all that. This is a lot of overall damage. From there, we're going to be taking 2 points in Escape Velocity. I will get into the jewels after we do the skill tree here. Then we're going to be taking weapons at 1 point and going into Stand and Deliver, critical damage bonus and all that, damage against enemies within 2 meters. Has a lot of overall DPS and there's no reason not to run it. Then we'll be going into Catalyst for that increased elemental damage with attacks it gives. Coming down and going in weapons at 1 point into Maiming Strike. The increased attack damage and chance with attacks to maim is really nice. Weapons at 2 points will be taking all this cluster, so Frazzled and Rattled, a lot of increased shock duration and shock magnitude. From there, we're going to be coming down with weapons at 1 point into Acceleration for the skill speed and all that. Then taking weapons at 1 point again, going into Falcon Dive. The increased attack speed per 250 accuracy rating means since we are stacking so much accuracy, we're going to get a lot of attack speed out of it. Then we'll be taking this jewel cluster down here. And like I said, I'll get into the jewels after. Then we're going to be coming in and taking Coming Calamity to get the increase of lightning damage while affected by our Herald. Coming up and taking all this crit cluster, the increased, crit chance and intelligence, the strength and crit damage, +1 crit chance added to the base is huge. All that is really good stuff. And we'll be going into enhanced reflexes for that increased evasion. Plus the percent increased dex is huge and allows us to basically get a lot higher, so we can have a lot higher gem levels on our dex gems. Then we'll be going with weapons at 1 point and taking Throat Seeker. The increased crit damage bonus, in my opinion, is way more damage than the reduced crit chance that it gives, so that's why I take it in this instance. From there, we'll be going in with main points into Exposed to the Storm. The lightning pen we get plus the increased crit chance against enemies with lightning exposure is really helpful to the build and adds a lot of DPS. Then we'll be going with weapons at 1 point again into Spectral Ward, so this way we can get more maximum energy shield per evasion rating on our body armor. And since we're doing a hybrid, we get a lot of ES out of it since we have a good amount of evasion on that hybrid body armor chest piece. From there, we'll be going down, going into this jewel socket, coming up and taking basically all this crit cluster. So True Strike, obviously the dex and increased crit chance is huge. The increased crit damage plus intelligence is really nice as well. And then finally, these nodes over here are like 70% increased damage altogether if we've done a crit recently. Plus the increased crit chance is nice and adds a lot of overall DPS to the build. And then the last thing we'll be doing here is taking weapons at 2 points and coming down and taking General Electric and Harmonic Generator for basically the increased magnitude of shock and all that, which allows us to achieve that 100% shock magnitude And the last thing we'll be going into is Unbound Forces again for basically the increased magnitude of Shock Me Inflict. For the jewels we're running, we are running a controlled metamorphosis, going for a massive ring here. What this allows us to do basically is we can allocate anything that's not connected to the tree and these two blue like circles here. So we'll be taking Wildstorm for more maximum lightning damage, helps with the lucky hits, Moment of Truth, obviously for the increased crit chance, which is really nice. And then finally Staggering Palm for the increased crit damage bonus that it gives. The next one we'll be taking is against a Darkness Time Lost Diamond, prioritizing that 4% of damage as extra lightning damage and throwing it here. This way we can get 12% of damage as extra lightning damage. Then we'll be going into a From Nothing, going with Unwavering Stance. This is huge for us because over here, this allows us to get a ton of increased damage against enemies that are on low life. So that's why we take that. We're pretty much not going to get a better From Nothing jewel. So that's why we do that. And then the last thing we're doing here is taking a just rare Time Lost Emerald, going with upgrade radius to medium and trying to get crit chance and attack speed on here. And then the last thing, if you can roll like increased damage with hits against rare unique enemies, increased damage with crossbows, even like attack damage, elemental damage, lightning damage, all that is still really good to roll as well on there. And this adds a ton of overall DPS than just rolling a normal emerald jewel, you know, going for like crit chance, crit damage, etc. So that's why we use this in this instance and throw it here. But that basically covers it for the tree and everything we're running. I hope that you guys did enjoy the video. Like I said, I'm having a blast with the build. We're one-shotting, you know, 80 million health pinnacle bosses, doing 2 to 3 man carries, no problem. Overall, the build's feeling really good, and we're not using spear. It's kind of off meta. I'm in love with it, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it as well. If you guys do enjoy the video, though, or you're liking what I'm doing on the channel, again, if you could, consider hitting a like on the video and a subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really helps me out, and it helps with YouTube algorithm, and in turn, that is the best way to support me. Also should be live right now streaming the build on YouTube and Twitch. The link for that will be in the description as well as the comment section of the video. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night depending on when you're watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.